Welcome back to Go to Hell with Erica and Kelly. I'm Kelly, and my cousin Erica is here, and she's going to introduce our special guest.
Our special guest today is Casey with us here in Holland, Michigan. And this was a huge surprise because we were doing some recording and Casey happened to be in town and our sister was hanging out with her. And we thought, hey, we've got a setup. We've got someone with some stories. Let's keep going. So here we are. This is completely on a whim. And we are just, I don't know. I'm so excited. This feels magical. We'll see if it stays magical.
Right
No
on.
pressure. So how are you, Casey?
Well, I'm a little afraid that I'm going to be a huge disappointment, but we're just going to roll with it.
We're going to roll with it.
Keep rolling.
Yes. So you want to bring her in with our
Oh, yes. So, Casey, what would you send to hell?
Water chestnuts.
Oh,
Yes.
Like, why do they exist? They're not celery and they're not a chestnut. They just don't need to be here anymore.
The texture.
Yeah,
you
it's
have,
just the whole thing.
It is
yeah.
bad.
Was
Why
there-
did everyone stir fries with water chestnuts?
There we go.
Just
I was
don't be
going to
there.
ask, what was it that set you off about them, but it must have been the stir fry.
Yeah, it's water chestnuts and stir fry. It's really disturbing. And the disappointing part is you still eat it because are you really going to pick through a stir fry to get them all out? No.
You can't.
It's just the human condition. We have to suffer through water chestnuts.
All right.
Well,
Yeah.
sending those water chestnuts to hell where they belong.
We're doing it. Okay. So, okay, on that note, tell
I
us
didn't really know
more.
what foot to start off with
No,
here.
that was a great foot. We
Great.
love it. So, but tell us more about you. Who are you? What do you do with your life? Where do you live?
Yeah, so my name is Casey, and I am a full-time missionary in Mwanza, Tanzania. And for anybody who doesn't know, that's right on Lake Victoria. I live in remote villages and work with empowering educators to teach the gospel and best practices well in Tanzanian schools.
Amazing. And you're back in town briefly.
So yeah, I'm here in Michigan for 5 months, starting a master's program, visiting churches and families, and just getting to get to share about the church in Tanzania and just the beautiful country I get to call home.
That's amazing. What are you studying?
So I am doing a master's of education in instruction and learning.
Wow.
Okay.
So
Right.
it's very fancy words to say that I want to know the best way how to play with Play-Doh.
Yes.
There you go.
You will learn, I'm sure.
I think so. I'm hoping
Little
so.
by
You'll have to
little.
get back to us
5
after you're
months
done.
later, the greatest Play-Doh sculpture of all time.
Exactly. And how do we learn from the Play-Doh? We learn more from Play-Doh than water chestnuts. So
Yes. I can concur. Working with children, Play-Doh,
it's
it'll
everything.
get you places.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
trying to teach things. Yeah. Okay. Well, moving on from Play-Doh. Okay, so you have a lot of stories. You've done a lot of mission work, are doing a lot of mission work.
Mm-hmm.
What we'd love to hear is just about basically a testimony of how have you seen the Lord work in just really mighty, powerful ways to send darkness back where it belongs.
yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, this is a really great topic to talk about, especially in our churches, especially in, I'm speaking now coming back to the Western side of the world where we don't speak about darkness as like tangible things. We speak about it as a concept. We speak about it as this like construct that can ruin your life because it looks different in different places. And as a missionary to Sub-Saharan Africa, I've gotten to work in a lot of places where darkness actually shows up tangibly, and that just has deep roots in what they do with their culture. But one of the countries I got to work in and live in was Madagascar. I worked in a very, very remote area of Madagascar. It was run by a tribe called the Bara. And for those of you who are not familiar, what an unreached people group is, it means that there was no sustainable churches among this people group that could continue to grow without outside help. So the presence of the gospel was really small. The Bara there's 13 tribes in Madagascar, and the Bara is by far the one that is pushed out and the most forgotten because of how aggressive they are. So just to give you guys a little bit of context about where I was living, it took us 3 days by car to get there. And the last day was 10 hours off-roading in a truck. And you had to be off the road by sunset, or these people would come out, and they are called malachos. So malasho is the Bara word for cattle thief. And this essentially means that they believe that they get to install vigilante justice on anybody who crosses them. So if you have something that they want, they are allowed to take it. Cops don't really come into these territories often in fear that they will die, because the malachos have more power than any type of political authority. So this is kind of our political landscape. This is our tribal landscape of the city that I lived in, called Batruka. And the Bara are also known for a very demonic ceremony called the turning of the bones. It is actually something that is largely looked after. Different sociologists have studied it because it is such a held ceremony among the Bara culture. So what they do is, when you bury a patriarchy, you bury him with few of his favorite possessions, and then you keep all of his other possessions locked and you keep them safe. And then it goes from every year to every 5 years, depending on when you have the money. You open up their tomb and you do exactly what it says, which is turning the bones. And then you replace all of his favorite items so that he would continue to offer you protection even after he is dead. This was not, I know that we hear this sometimes and we're like, well, this is just outright crazy. Like this is not a thing that could happen. But these spirits, to the Bara people, they exist and they are real and they are tangible. They control whether you go into another tribe and you try to take all of their cattle. They control every person that you slaughter. Like if the spirit is appeased, they will help you in the war. And so we lived in, it was called a town, but I don't really know what we would call it in English because it's not the word of a town. Like I got my rice and my flour from a gas station and it was out of a sack. So it's not like you just like go to a nearby grocery store. So one of our neighbors had a turning of the bone ceremony. And what happens before this is that all the relatives are called. So people from everywhere find out that there's a turning of the bone ceremony, and everybody shows up with homemade liquor. So everybody is drinking and they are smoking for days. It's probably 3 or 4 days. And then you go from morning all the way through evening and you take rotations of who's going to stay up and sing and who's going to dance. And all of these different things have to happen in succession. So we became aware of it, my roommates and I. We were all foreign missionaries. We became aware of it when we started seeing outside people come into our area, which was, you can tell when somebody wasn't from your town. And we started to pay attention that large crowds would be around our street. When we would walk outside of our gate, we would see probably 50 or 60 people sitting on the ground. So we knew something was happening, but we didn't know what. And we would ask our neighbors, and nobody was officially mentioning that there was a turning of the bone ceremony, but we started figuring it was going to happen until a large group of malachos showed up on the corner. And we were walking to actually our team leader's house, and there was probably 150 malachos standing on the corner. So those are those cattle thieves that I had talked about earlier. And how you know is that they usually have some form of red on their head, and they're carrying any type of assault rifle that you can think of, and machetes are strapped onto their back. So we started to get a little scared because we had never encountered so many at one place. Like we'd seen malachos, and usually 3 or 4, that's not dangerous. But when you are the only 3 people in your village who are white walking through an area with about 150 people who all have assault rifles on them, you start getting real aware of how you could get out as fast as possible. And we just started praying. We all started holding hands and kind of walking together, and we just started praying. And this little mom who made fried rice balls called mokari. saw us walking from her cafe. She like hobbled out to come meet us, and she held our hands and she walked us through the crowds. And then that night, when all of those mulattoes had gathered down the street for this turning of the bones ceremony, she came out again and walked us back to our house. So this is starting to, you're starting to really feel that there is a presence of darkness, because as a missionary, you get to see things all the time. And there's those little moments where you go, oh, I need prayer. Like, I need to start praying right now. And Erica, I'm sure you know this. Mm-hmm. There's these moments where you just instinctively start talking to God. So seeing these mulattoes on the corner was a moment where we instinctively started talking to God. There was no question in our mind that is what needed to happen. And so I think there's some times where immediately you almost have this feeling, if I can use the name of the podcast, where you're like, okay, something needs to go to hell right now because it's suffocating and I can see it. And then later that night, after we had gotten into our house and we had locked up everything, we started hearing the music and the screaming, and the turning of the bone ceremony had begun. And our whole house was shaking with the sounds of the speakers and the wailing, that we actually were trying to get videos of what it looked like to be in this. We lived in a 3-story building on the bottom level, and every single wall was concrete. Like, that is like living in an easy bake oven, essentially. And like,
good way to put it.
It's real hot.
Yeah.
So we couldn't have any of our windows open because we had been instructed, close your windows, lock up your shutters, and keep us safe. But we were trying to even get a video of what it was like to be in this house, having sound just reverberate off of every surface and having your windows pound into the point where I kept saying, can glass break because of sound? Like, I did not take physics, but I was like, I'm pretty sure this can happen. I don't know. And like the whole night we would just hear screaming, loud music. There was no power, so it got hot. And you are just physically feeling that not only are you uncomfortable, but there is something darker happening outside, and our neighbors are partaking in it. This is their cultural moment to be a part of. This is their family's moment that they have to turn over these bones. Obviously, none of my roommates, whether it was from the loud music or just the spiritual warfare that was happening legitimately 100 feet away from us, we could not sleep. There was just not a minute of us that we could actually get ourselves to get to rest because it was so loud. Like, our beds were throbbing with this like huge, I don't know what to call it. It felt like being inside of chaos. And, as a believer, I firmly believe that like there's a reason why the gospel of peace is on our feet. It's because it's what grounds us in this life. So to feel like you are in a cloud of chaos is the most alarming, disorientating feeling that I can think of. And that is what this turning of the bones ceremony felt like. So my roommates and I, all 3 of us couldn't have slept. And so we were up the next morning, music still raging. We're talking about at 5:30 in the morning. Music is raging. People are yelling. People are drunk. You're hearing bottles break all the time. We just prayed, and we just started praying. Cause that's like, first of all, you're tired. And I don't know if you guys are crabby when you're tired, but I'm not exactly a delight. And neither were my roommates, to be honest. We all felt the chaos and the on edge version of ourselves. We all knew that day we were probably going to need to extend a little bit more grace. So we just started praying together. We desperately wanted a way out, because at that moment, it was also coming between us 3 as the believers. It was between coming into that holy space that we had built in our house to try to be a light into our community. And so we just started praying for a way out. And during that day, we weren't allowed to walk anywhere by ourselves because we would have been put into danger. Just as a foreigner walking alone in a ceremony like this, it can get really rough. So again, continue to pray, continue to pray. And it was the next night, and we are ready for this ceremony to continue going. So we had prayed, we had talked about it with our team leads. And yeah, the next night, that same presence didn't hold in our house. That same presence wasn't there. Yeah, the music was loud, but the windows didn't shake like the night before. Yeah, the people were screaming, but it seemed to be slightly farther from where it was hitting us. And I just remember thinking about this image of this is darkness and we get to be light here in our community. And our whole goal working with the Bara was trying to convey a message of there is hope and peace outside of our ancestors. There's protection that doesn't come from ancestral worship, which was the turning of the bones, but it can come from the Savior. And I just remember the fact that I don't remember the next night. It wasn't as this like stark contrast of like, oh, this is the ceremony. It was like we are here and this is the community we get to love and worship. Or sorry, this is the community we get to love and worship with. So hopefully that's a story that shows us something that can go to hell.
Yeah. I have so many questions.
Hopefully I have answers.
So the ceremony, well, first of all, I just feel like that, I think, at least having had experience also living in East Africa, although this didn't happen in East Africa, but
they're like
still,
Southeast Africa.
Yeah. I think when you leave the U.S., when you leave a Western country, Kelly, you've experienced this too, like you realize how much more aware people are of the spirit realm and how much more real the spirit realm is and how dark it can get. And the fact that like there is power there. Like people aren't just doing these things for tradition's sake or for fun or just because like everyone's done it before them. Like there's actual like power to it, and like which as Christians we believe is like not of the light, Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just like for the average American hearing that story could potentially be disorienting as far as like why would they even do that. I think it's easy to write off as like, well, that's just that's not real. No, it is real. Like there is very real darkness there and there's real power there. Like that this, I don't know why I want to call them a motorcycle game. Were they on motorcycles? What were they doing?
I don't remember any of them having motorcycles.
I think that's just how I pictured them.
But they're called Malashas. So it all starts with an M. So
okay. Yeah.
If they had motorcycles, they would love them. So
I don't know if that would help or hurt. What they're doing
would hurt.
Yeah.
Very happy
but
to be motorcyclists.
The ceremony itself that they're involved in.
Yeah.
Like, because is there violence involved? Or like what part of that would be
concerning? When we're warned about the violence involved, it's because of the amount of partying that happens. So the amount of drinking and smoking. And I don't know if you experience this, but in many different tribes that I work with, you don't just drink to take the edge off. Like Americans will come home and be like, oh, I had a long day. Let me crack open a beer.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I'm from West Michigan. I understand. But like they drink to lose themselves entirely. Yeah. Like it is not a moderation thing. And they are in a ceremony where they want other things to take control of them. So the violence that comes out in these things is mostly because they have let go of their full selves. And I'm going to steal some other language here, but they use a false self and the drink helps them get there.
Yeah. And I would think that would, your inhibitions go down spiritually, even if we can't see what's going on. If you're opening yourself up to darkness, like it's kind of like playing Russian roulette. You never know what's going to come through that door. Yeah. So it makes sense that there would then be potentially a lot of violence too.
And I do forget how odd some of this stuff sounds in a different perspective. When you're drenched in a culture, it becomes like a norm. You know, we talk about spirits. We like those are now in my community, those are things that are just believed. You know, it's not a question of this is dark. But I like how you said that, you know, when you're opening yourself up, you're letting anything be filled in. And unlike a lot of religions, Christianity never talks about just opening yourself up like other other religions. It talks about filling yourselves with the love of Christ, the light of Christ, so that nothing else can come in that place, which is different. And I do believe that also stands out in what we call ATR, which is African traditional religions. You're not just opening up so any spirit, anything can come in and take over. You're opening for the light of Christ to come in.
Okay, it's so interesting, actually. This is connecting back to something I was just listening to. I was listening to this teaching about that verse in the Bible that talks about, like, it's in the New Testament. I'm not good with references, but, like, Paul is saying, like, therefore, don't get drunk with wine, rather be filled with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And so the guy teaching on it was giving some background into the culture there. It was like the Greek culture. And specifically, they were worshiping a grape. Oh my gosh.
They were worshiping a grape.
Did anybody else like just see Veggie Tales in their head, or is that just me?
I'm a little tired. Clearly, I'm slurring my own words. Haven't had anything to drink. Here we go. A Greek god, like specifically of wine and of chaos, and the way that people would use wine is exactly for that reason, to get so inebriated that they were able to open themselves up to like the spirit of that god.
I'm just imagining someone becoming a grape.
Casey's stuck.
I know.
Stuck on the grape.
Okay, so you have a kindergarten teacher on a podcast.
This is how it goes.
Keep going.
Yeah. And so I don't know. It's just interesting that I was just thinking about this and you're telling the same story. I think in the States, we think about getting drunk as just like, oh, that's unfortunate. You're making a bad decision.
Yeah.
And you're doing maybe some bad things, but really you're opening a spiritual door.
You're not in control of who you are anymore. You know, like Jesus took wine and took the bread around the table. He did it in his community to be with one another, like to celebrate. There was celebration. There was a togetherness. But yeah, when you are getting drunk, when you are, you know, letting yourself completely go, it's like, how is that bringing you closer to the Lord?
Yeah. You're filling yourself with other spirits, not being full of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Yeah. Man. That would have
experience.
been a little scary.
Just a little scary.
Yeah. You know, and there's so many different stories that like I could tell about, like I had a brick thrown at me one time and, you know, it almost killed the toddler that I was walking with, and the Lord just rescues you. But I think at like the end of this story is that we are able to look at these things and we are able to say that thing is evil, but that is only because we have seen true goodness and we have seen true light and we have seen the true God and we are with him. And so I just think that that's a really amazing thing that we get to carry in our lives, is that, and these things don't just happen, you know, on the fields, like in the villages. I actually just made a comment to my friend that America has become a very dark place coming back with the amount of division and anger. And coming back into this was a very weird experience. But we as Christians get to send all of that to hell constantly and get to be image bearers of light and carry that with us. So yeah, as scary as the ceremony sounds, how empowering is it to know that our God has let us send it to hell with the way that he wants us to live and to take and be empowered by him.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's good.
Yeah.
I love it. Do you have any thoughts, Kelly?
Kind of just in shock still, like soaking it in. And then distracted by the grape. But it's just,
Oh my gosh.
you know.
You're not going to get past that.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
guys,
don't go to
okay.
a turning brown ceremony and like don't bow to any grapes.
Yeah. That's, I think, like a really good summary.
Is it?
Well, okay, I'm curious, Casey.
Yeah.
What advice then would you give to believers in the States who, I think like you said, darkness just looks a little bit different here, but how do we become more aware, or how do we I don't know, like grow in discernment of the darkness around us and navigate that when it is a little more maybe discreet, or I don't know. We're not seeing these economies, like these spiritual practices so strongly, but we're worshiping other kinds of covert things. So
Yeah. That's a really great question. And I think one of the darknesses that has come into America, and again, this is my limited perspective, is something that Americans are known for across the world, but I think it's also our undoing, which is this constant thing that we have to be doing something. We have to be being productive. We have to be producing an outcome. We have to be achieving a goal. Like, where does the Bible command us to do that? Because what I see is abide, rest, take time with me. Yeah, sow your crops, but I can't stare at a seed and be like, hey, grow, hey, grow. You gotta wait. It's gonna come when it comes. So I say all of that to say there's different types of prayer that you can do, but one of them is the contemplative prayer, where you sit and you are silent and you are quiet with the Lord. There's no words required. And Erica has known me my whole entire life. The poor thing tried to teach me piano. And
It's an old memory you just
Yes.
unlocked there. Oh
there you
boy.
go. And I'm not good at sitting still. This is not something that I excel at. I love doing things. And I believe part of that has gotten me where I am on the mission field. But there was a part of me that was challenged to learn that there is types of prayer where you have to sit and to be quiet. Act like God is in the room with you. And I have a famous pastor, and he likes to say, look at the Lord lovingly as he is looking at you lovingly, and sit in that moment. And I believe once you are sitting in that presence of abiding and peace and of love, you begin to start seeing things differently. Because the more in tune you are with that spirit, the more times you're going to start seeing things that are not of the Lord. You're going to start seeing things that are out of tune. These conversations that, are they pushing you towards Jesus, or are they pushing you away? You know, the Facebook, Instagram, whatever other social media is out there now, I feel like I live under a rock because I don't actually know how to name them all anymore.
You're not missing anything.
Right?
really not.
But like, are those things pushing you towards Christ? Or does a slip of anxiety come into your heart? And are they pushing you away? Because we know that the Lord is not an anxious presence. He's a presence of peace. So I would challenge people in the West, like, are you taking time to just look at God lovingly as he is adoring you as a person? Because once that adoration starts filling your eyes and your days, your spirit will start catching up on things that go, this isn't just some microaggression that I'm feeling. This is actually something in my spirit that's saying, this isn't how God wanted this world to be. And take those kernels and then act. How would Jesus act in this present moment? It's almost like a what would Jesus do if the 90s didn't kill that slang for everybody and slaughter it?
Did they kill it?
I mean, like,
I don't know.
Like a tiny massacre.
could we just go with like a different color bracelet other than neon orange instead of the traffic cone? Anybody else picturing that?
I feel like I had a rainbow colored one. There were lots of colors, Kate.
Great. Apparently
So
I
many.
missed that one. Okay. Anyway.
The 90s killed it. Fine.
But like, okay, now I sound like a horrible missionary. Listen, keep wearing the what would Jesus do bracelets. Don't get rid of this. But like, actually think to yourself in those moments, like when something tugs at your spirit, the spirit is still with you in that moment. When that anxiety comes, you do not have to speak. You do not have to respond. You can just sit with the spirit in that microsecond when you see something that produces anxiety, when you want to bite somebody's head off for having a different opinion than yours. Yeah, I'm going to say that's the big one in America right now. Mm-hmm. Sit there, think with the spirit, And if you don't respond right away, it's because you are taking to notice that there are other things at play right now.
Yeah. I love that answer because it's so simple. Like, I don't know, like whether you're dealing with some sort of like worship idolatrous ceremony or whether you're dealing with just the dissension that we see every day, it's just spending time with the Lord and like getting to know his heart and growing in discernment. Like, I don't know.
And like,
It's simple.
yeah. And it's just nothing you have to do. Other than look at the Lord looking at you lovingly. How much different would that have changed so many of our upbringings if we didn't have to strive for that. We just knew it was already happening and we just had to look back. He's already looking at us with admiration. All we have to do is sit and be with him and breathe in that air. Whole different perspective.
I love it.
Very refreshing. Refreshing take on life.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, any other last minute short stories that you have to share?
Ah, man.
I know you probably have a lot.
You know what? Quick one.
Quick
Can
one.
go right to hell. We'll
Do
end
it.
it on this note.
Okay.
So one time I was real tired. I was living in my house in Tanzania. And this like 6-foot long snake came in front of my door.
Oh,
No.
And listen, I know like people are like, yeah, the demons. No, I was just so tired. I was like, Lord, no. The snake slithered away. I did not have to get it out of my house with my snake bucket. It was a really good day.
praise God.
There you go.
Praise God. So much faith. Just, Lord, no.
I know that sounds like a faith, but I honestly think, yeah, maybe that was faith. I just really had not had enough coffee to deal with that issue that day.
Okay, Casey, unless I'm misremembering, I feel like a similar thing happened to you in Chicago. Did you get mugged? Was that you?
Oh, yes. Oh, I forget about this one. Yeah.
Same vibes.
Same. Yeah. I tell a lot of things no. And I honestly think it's because I have a lack of coffee.
So what happened?
Okay. So I went to school in downtown Chicago and I was running really late for class. I was really grumpy. I think I had just failed a paper and I had a backache and I was not in the mood to be trifled with by the physical or spiritual or mental realm of that day. And I was trying to go get Tylenol from a pharmacy that was right across the street. And a guy popped out of this alley wearing a trench coat and he said, "Freeze, give me your money." And I don't know what I thought I was doing, but I just said no and just kept walking. And it was like, that dude was the dumbest. And I crossed the street and my hands kind of started jittering a little bit. And I was like, was I almost just mugged? Did he have a gun? Like, I know his hand was in his pocket. And then I just went to class and sat down with my friends and I guess proceeded on.
Same energy.
Yeah, same energy. I just,
Incredible.
yeah, I would not, don't trifle with me if I had not have a good cup of coffee.
Not
All
to be
right.
trifled with.
Not to be trifled with.
Amen.
Snakes or muggers or
All right.
grapes or water chestnuts.
Yeah, any snakes or muggers listening to this, now you know. Casey's off limits.
Exactly.
And grapes.
I totally forgot about that story until you just brought it up.
I feel like that story is like one of the top ones. When I think about you, I think about Casey just telling the mugger, no.
Not dealing with you
today.
today. I know. I feel, again, I'm really glad that people can hear that as a story of faith because in my head, I just hear it as like, wow, am I a cranky person?
Or maybe that's just like a gift from the Lord. Just to
Yeah.
be able to say no. I don't know.
Love it.
Maybe we're over spiritualizing it.
I mean, you can never over spiritualize a good cup of coffee.
That's true.
So like, yeah, if I wasn't connected with that coffee and ultimately with the Spirit of the Lord through that coffee, yeah, you can't over spiritualize.
So the lesson is we should all be pursuing the Lord the same way Casey pursues coffee.
Yes.
Okay.
And Jesus.
And Jesus.
yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, on
She's
that
like,
note,
imitate me as I drink my coffee.
Oh my word, do I need that on a bumper sticker? Yeah, don't imitate me without coffee, but like, yeah, I should stop talking.
we're following a couple different rabbit trails here. we're making it though.
Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you for being so
thanks for
willing
having me.
to sit down and chat and tell us some stories and talk about some wild things. We love it.
My pleasure.
wild
Thanks
ride.
for this podcast.
Yeah.
Keep spreading the light.
We will try. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on Go to Hell with Erica and Kelly. We will see you next time.